From the T to the V to the B to the 9, I'm the worst content maker that's ever been online. How's it going, my non-existent viewers? It is TVB. And this is the 11th Skizzo Rambling video. I decided because I've been numbering all these Skizzo Ramblings except for the New Year's Day one. But I did, back in January for New Year's Day. I figured this is going to be like another Skizzo Rambling because I promised this in my last Skizzo Rambling video that I made on Leap Day. Because I was hoping I could do the American Dragon Jake Long spoiler talk in that video, but I hadn't watched all the episodes on time. I actually just finished season 2 tonight, and I'm finally ready to talk about the show, as well as talk about Dune Part 2, because I saw that. I know I'm late to this party, but I got around to seeing it back on Friday with my friends. And I'll go into spoilers for American Dragon, but for the sake of anyone who still hasn't seen Dune Part 2 yet, like me, I'm not going to dive into spoilers for Dune Part 2. And of course, it's a Skizzo Rambling video. I never write scripts for these videos, especially if Skizzo Ramblings, I really like making these videos just super, unscripted and just random and silly and things like that. But I did, walk in, I'm recording this with, a certain vision in mind with this series, somewhat. I'm gonna upload this, I'm recording this, it's 9:34 currently on March 19th. It's the Spring Equinox today. And I'm gonna start, because, I made a Would You Rather Wednesday poll a few weeks ago asking, how often you guys would like me to, do these kind of videos, and everyone voted for just, once a month. So I think moving forward, I'm gonna make a Skizzo Rambling video on the first day of every month, for as long as I feel like it. I'll make my next Skizzo Rambling after this on April Fool's Day, April 1st, and then one on May Day, May 1st, then June 1st, July 1st, August 1st, September 1st, you guys get the idea. And yeah, because I really like making these kind of videos. They're just a great way for me to just get things off my chest and just yammer about life and stuff like that. And also, I thought today would be a good day for the Skizzo Rambling, not just because today is officially the first day of spring, but also tomorrow, March 20th, is tomorrow it's gonna be 1 year since I made my final video before I took my hiatus from making YouTube videos last year. But yeah, we'll get to that later. My apologies if you guys hear my phone going off in this video. I just want to talk about Dune Part 2 very quick. Just gonna say this right off the bat. This shouldn't surprise anybody, but this is my favorite movie of the year so far. 8 out of 9 stars. It's awesome. I've only seen Dune Part 1 the one time I've seen it in theaters, and I seriously regret not rewatching it before or reading the book that's based on, or the original from the 1980s that paved the way for this new franchise. I guess Denis Villeneuve, the director of both these Dune films, I was just he's so unique as a director, because Denis Villeneuve, he gets these massive budgets for these massive sci-fi spectacles like Arrival and Blade Runner 2049, and of course these 2 Dune films. But his films, despite being these huge massively produced blockbuster films, always have a very art house theater feel to it. The main issue, I do actually, again, I've only seen Dune Part 1 the one time I saw it in theaters. I say, at the moment, maybe I'll change my mind on this, maybe I won't. I think Dune Part 2 is slightly better than the first Dune, because they're both slow burners. Slow burner is a word I use a lot to describe movies. Please understand that slow burner is not synonymous with boring. I was not bored at all, I wasn't bored necessarily by the first Dune, but I feel there were some scenes where the first Dune was almost too much of a slow burner for its own good. Because I remember being seeing that movie in theaters back in 2021. I had a long day at work. Unfortunately I fell asleep through more parts of the film than I'd like to admit. So I really didn't want to make the same mistake with Dune Part 2, because when I saw this movie with my friends, I drank way too many energy drinks, both before and while we were in the theater seeing it. And it's funny because I saw this movie with my friend Joe, who also was, you guys may or may not recognize him from my Buffalo Wild Wings video that we made back in September. He was one filming me doing the Blazing Knockout Challenge. He and his friend Connor and I saw Dune Part 2 together, and because it was just like the 15th, this past Friday, was just the day that worked the best for the three of us to see it. I was really considering just like seeing the movie by myself, like, back on a few weeks ago on Discount Tuesday, just by myself so I can see it. But then I realized, you know what, I just see the movie twice in the theaters. I like almost never see movies twice in the theaters. I think I can count maybe like on one hand the number of times in the past, like, oh my gosh, like 7 years since I've seen a movie twice in theaters. Like, I saw A Way of Water twice in theaters. I saw Across the Spider-Verse last year twice in theaters. And I was considering seeing Dune Part 2, twice in theaters, but I said, because a few weeks ago, I was just busy with, like, work and stuff going on in my life, and I was just like, you know what the heck, I can wait 2 weeks. Then when we saw the movie together, like, Joe and Connor were just like, oh yeah, we both, like, because they both had already seen the movies with their respective families, so I was, between the three of us, I was the only one who hadn't watched the movie a first time before, which I thought was fine. That was already their second time seeing it, so I was like brand new to the film. But yeah, it was just, again, everything was like, I feel like Dune Part 2, like the pacing was like, the extra action scenes, like the action scenes, it's so well choreographed. The stunt work, the CGI, like, the setting, the cinematography, the sound effects, the CGI, and the worms, the giant, like, Mongolian space death worms, like, just those things are so freaky. And the lore and how, like, it touches base on Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya's relationship, and just, again, I won't go into spoilers, but there's just a lot of really neat twists and turns, and like, I can't wait for the third part of this franchise. And I find it really interesting because the Dune novel paved the way for, like, because for those of you who don't know, George Lucas, was actually inspired by the Dune book to make Star Wars. So, like, and, so Dune, it was really Dune that paved the way for, like, modern sci-fi, not like Star Wars or Star Trek, kind of in the same way that, like, Tolkien with Lord of the Rings paved the way for, like, modern fantasy. So I really am, like, I'm super curious and, like, reading the book at some point. It's gonna happen. But yeah, like I said, Dune Part 2, 8 out of 9 stars. It's an awesome film. Now, this is the part of the video where I'm gonna jump into spoilers for American Dragon Jake Long. So if you don't want spoilers for the cartoon, like if you, for whatever reason, haven't watched it and you plan on doing so and don't want spoilers, skip ahead to this time right here that I'm putting up, like, on screen. Otherwise, like, I would, if you guys want to hear me yammer about American Dragon Jake Long, I shall. And like I said, like, because I touched base on this in my last Skizzo Rambling video, I love how diverse the show is, despite, like, because it's set, like, because obviously the show is first aired in 2005 and ended in 2007. Like, this is before there was a huge push for, like, having diverse casts in movies and TV shows. And yeah, like, we had kids who grew up in the 2000s, like me, had access to a show that, like, showed, like, hey, a biracial protagonist with, like, his parents are interracial marriage, and, he has, like, two best friends of different races, and how they intertwine, like, both Chinese mythology with Western mythology, and just different, like, legends and myths and folklore from around the world. I mean, I will say this one nitpick: the Christmas episode in season 2 of the Sasquatches, where the baby Sasquatch is kidnapped and, like, Jake has to rescue it to bring it back to its family. They call them Sasquatches when it's like, hey, their fur is white, like a Yeti, right? Because the Yetis are supposed to be, like, white or grayish and, like, in the snowy region. So does Sasquatches have a better ring to it than Yeti does? I guess, like, why do they have to be Sasquatches? Why can't they be, like, Yetis in the Himalayas, especially take into consideration all the Asian inspiration for the cartoon, right? I also wanted to touch base, like, on Dante Bosco voices Jake Long, who also voiced Zuko. And what I think, if I were to, make, like, a video just saying this right now, like, my favorite cartoon of all time is SpongeBob SquarePants. with Avatar: The Last Airbender being a very close second. And I didn't, when I first heard that Dante Bosco also voices both Jake Long and Zuko, I was like, oh, I can kind of hear the similarities, because like Zuko on one hand, he was the Fire Prince, and his own father burns his face, and he gets banished and has to go on his whole like villainous quest to capture the Avatar. It's so weird seeing the difference of like backstories, because Jake Long, on the other hand, has a great relationship with his dad. And I think it's funny how like these it only got 2 seasons, right? How like the secret about like magic and fantasy and all these different like magical creatures living right there in New York City was kept a secret from Jake's father up all the way until the show's finale, for season 2. And his dad is really accepting of it, because he knew in the back of his head that there was something magical about this family, and it was really neat. I just think it's funny how, like, now that I'm saying it out loud, that Dante Bosco voiced 2 characters who have, like, where those characters that he voiced, their relationships with their dads, respectively, could not have been more different. Because Zuko, as we know from Avatar: Last Airbender, Iroh is the real fatherly figure in his life, not Ozai. But yeah, I think my favorite episodes of Jake Long, I'm not entirely sure if I have like a singular favorite, but I will say that like a few of my favorites, maybe like a handful, would be the show's the series finale, as well as the episode with the Christmas special and the Halloween special, where like Jake throws a wild like party on Halloween, and with both people and like the magic creatures, and that fight scene in the end, and probably the homecoming episode, where Jake basically Rose forgets who he is at the end of the episode, because one thing I really like about Jake Long is that like he's a very relatable protagonist, because he's in he's a middle schooler, he's in his teens, and obviously like when you're a kid, like especially like between the start of middle school up until the end of high school, I feel like everyone goes through at least one phase. Most people have multiple phases, but everyone has at least one phase during that 8-year time frame you have between starting middle school and graduating high school, where your hormones and your childish teenage nature just gets the best of you, and you're just the worst version of yourself, and you're just insufferable to be around, and we see that with Jake Long, because he's very, he's not perfect, he makes mistakes, he's lazy, he tries to make the easy way out, which Grandpa teaches him, especially in an episode where he uses the cheat codes for his powers, and the goblins steal the controller from him, and Grandpa's be like, oh, it's only through failure you learn how to succeed. And it's funny, I'm making the connection between that episode to when Zuko tells Sokka in the season 3 episode of Airbender, when they're at the Fire Nation prison trying to rescue Sokka's dad, hey, even if you fail and fail again, you can't try just because you're afraid that you might fail. And it's funny because Zuko teaches another, a character voiced by Dante Bosco teaches another character that lesson, while Jake learns that lesson, another character from Dante Bosco, from someone else in that show. And I also learned interestingly enough, kind of like how the word soar in Greek, soar means lizard, right? And we attach that word to dinosaur, right? Which dinosaur means terrible lizard. The word soar can refer to both lizards and dinosaurs, respectively, the same way the Chinese word for dragon, long, right? The Chinese long is used to refer to not only dragons but also dinosaurs in the Chinese language. I learned this fairly recently, actually, which makes sense because as a kid I learned about a species of dinosaur, a small theropod, like a meat-eating dinosaur from the Cretaceous period called Mei Long, which was discovered in China, and Mei Long means a sleeping dragon. It's just a little fun dinosaur trivia for you guys. And yeah, this. And also, really, I think one of my other favorite episodes would be the Chinese New Year episode, because I touched base on this in my last Skizzo ramble, I'll say it again here. This has always been a total mystery to me, but my sister and I didn't have Disney Channel growing up, like in our house in New Jersey. Like, for whatever reason, our cable provider didn't have it until we switched to Fios. Like, when I was, like, in 4th or 5th grade, then we could finally watch Disney Channel. But during, like, kindergarten, 1st grade, when this show was released back in 2005 and 2006, and, when I was in 2nd grade as well, like, I never got the chance to watch those old school Disney Channel shows, like Jake Long, or Kim Possible, or, like, Wizards of Waverly Place, or That's So Raven, or Hannah Montana, or Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. And my sister and I only ever really got to watch Disney Channel shows when we would visit my grandparents in Denver, because they had Disney Channel on their cable provider on their TV, so we would watch that. And I remember watching, like, the only episode of Jake Long I remember watching as a kid was the Chinese New Year episode, so I have, like, nostalgia put on this show for that reason, where, like, Jake's dad is like, oh, my Chinese ancestor's this, my Chinese ancestor's that, and, his mom, Susan, the Chinese parent, is just like, you're not Chinese! And, the show's very, like, again, the representation of, like, Chinese culture for kids in the 2000s was very, because I'm very much an advocate for representation in movies and TV shows and video games and stuff like that, but not, like, it has to serve the story and not feel like it's, like, shoving an agenda in our faces. She-Hulk, Velda. Excuse me. Sorry, my throat just got really itchy there. But yeah, the show, like, also, the animation style, the split between Season 1's animation and Season 2's animation is, like, it definitely took some getting used to. I hear the animators, they changed the way that the show looks for a 2nd season to give it, like, a sleeker look, because Season 1's animation, yeah, it is, like, they're both rather, I guess, simplistic, like, art styles, necessarily. They're not, like, super detailed, but they both have a distinctive flair to it. I can understand why they made the change. I just kind of feel like the show would benefit if it just stuck with one or the other for both seasons. And yes, I did watch the crossover between Jake Long and Lilo and Stitch for Lilo and Stitch show. Like, they had that series out on Disney Channel. They did a whole crossover. And it's funny because in the 2000s, because the first film Lilo and Stitch was released in 2002, right? And it was such a success that it got all these sequels and spin-off shows, and, like, some of those were not very well received, like Leroy and Stitch. So it was like, okay, Disney, we get it. We can dial it down with the Lilo and Stitch sequels and whatnot. But yeah, it's interesting how of all Disney movies you could cross over, like, of all the crossovers that Disney could have done, right, they chose Jake Long and Lilo and Stitch, which is interesting because, like, in the early 2000s, that was when Disney movies like Lilo and Stitch started experimenting with, like, it was like the post-Renaissance era after, like, the 90s with Lion King and Tarzan and movies like that. They tried making, like, sci-fi films, like, Atlantis and Treasure Planet, which both those films are so underrated that they bombed at the box office, which is really not fair. But yeah, they chose, like, because Jake Long is, like, urban fantasy, right? It's like having magic creatures in a real setting, like New York City, right? I feel like that Jake Long is, like, a show that, like, leans more towards fantasy and sci-fi, right? While Lilo and Stitch as a movie leans more towards sci-fi than fantasy. And they mix those two together because, well, really, like, in fantasy you have magic, right? When, if magic were to, like, really exist, it's still just science that we can't explain, right? And I like how in the crossover episode, like, Jake's grandpa, like, his only, like, aside from his family, his only real companion is, like, Fu, the dog that the talking dog in the show. And yet, like, he gets a girlfriend by the old lady that we see in the Lilo and Stitch films, which and the TV series, which I think is funny. Like, he gets a love interest, and it's like, old people romance representations making kids want to throw up ever since, like, the 2000s, and having other characters gagging comic relief. But yeah, that crossover was, like, the last episode, I guess you could say, showcasing, like, that Season 1 animation style. And I haven't, like, I also, at my grandparents' house, I remember watching, like, my sister and I, we definitely watched quite a few episodes together, the Lilo and Stitch series. And I remember my sister saying, Vita, you're way too old for movies like this, when she walked down me watching Leroy and Stitch when I was like in third grade, because I was like a 9-year-old at the time. It's like, Vita, this movie is like targeted for preschoolers. You need to like watch something else. But yeah, also one thing I want to say is with Jake Long, this might sound totally unrelated. If I adopt a pug during this year being Year of the Dragon, that's why I decided to watch, the show in its entirety, was because of, it being like Chinese New Year, it's Year of the Dragon, and I was like, I reluctantly got Disney Plus, this past February, because, I touched base on that, like, in my last Skizzo rambling. I wanted to, like, watch the full series of Jake Long, and also, I've watched The Lion Guard as well, up and like, I've watched like up until the first few episodes of season 3, because The Lion King turns 30 years old this year, and I've considered making a very special, like, classic movie review this year in honor of The Lion King's 30th anniversary, so I figured might as well go on a Lion King splurge and watch The Lion Guard as well. I also begrudgingly watched the 2019 remake for The Lion King, but yeah, I really just wanted to, because I was like, I remember like watching the Chinese New Year episode of Jake Long when I was a kid and being really interested in, like, I've been interested in like watching the show in its entirety for years, and I finally got around to doing it, and here's the thing with me and TV shows, because I generally I used to say that, like, oh, I prefer playing video games over watching TV shows and cartoons, but I've noticed lately it's that, like, I can only really be invested in either one or the other, like, at a time. Like, either I commit to a video game for, like, a few months, or I commit to a TV show for as long as the show goes for, then I go back to playing video games. Because I have a little confession to make. I haven't turned on my Xbox or my Switch since January. Because, like, I get home from work, and, I've been going to the gym nowadays, right? And I've been going to the gym, like, 4 to 6 days a week, give or take. Yeah, I prefer, because there's a gym right next to, like, the Dogtopia I've been working at since October. So I go there, like, after I get off my AM shifts at, like, 2 p.m.-ish. Or I go there before my PM shifts, because the PM shifts, I start at 2 o'clock and end like at 9 o'clock, give or take. So I've been working out more, and if you follow me on Instagram, you've probably have seen my stories that I've posted of me, like, lifting weights and, doing cardio and stuff like that. But yeah, because I just have a difficult time, like, finding the time for, like, multiple things, especially if it's, like, for stuff I just want to do in my free time, like, making videos or watching TV shows or playing my Xbox. I really, like, something gets the chopping block. So yeah, I've been neglecting Minecraft and Pokemon on my Switch in the name of watching Jake Long, like, American Dragon. So I feel like I've been spending my time very wisely. Yes. Very, very wisely indeed. But if I adopt a pug during Year of the Dragon this year, which, I mean, it's not going to happen this year, so maybe in 2036, the next Year of the Dragon on the Chinese calendar, I will adopt a pug, and if it's a boy pug, I'll name him Jake. And if it's a girl, I'll name her Haley, after Jake's sister in the show. And, like, I just really like the idea of just, like, if I ever become, like, an eccentric billionaire, right? Or just, like, have the money, or at least enough to, like, afford taking care of a dog, right? I really would like to have a whole grumble of rescue pugs. A grumble's a group of pugs, right? And name each one after different animals in the Chinese zodiac. Or if I just have, like, one pug at a time, like, I'll name the pug depending on what year it is on the Chinese calendar, because pugs are a Chinese breed, right? So if I feel like it would just be cool, like, adopt a pug and name it after whatever animal the year is. Like, so if I adopt a pug during Year of the Dragon, I'll name either Jake or Haley, if it's a boy pug or a girl pug, respectively. If I adopted a pug last year, though, in Year of the Rabbit, or in 2035, which is going to be the next Year of the Rabbit, I'll name it Zoikis. Zoikis is the Lithuanian word for rabbit. My mom's from Lithuania. My grandparents, who my sister and I would visit in Colorado growing up, they they moved from Lithuania. They moved from Lithuania to America after World War II. So out of respect for my heritage and the pugs, Lithuania and China respectively, I think it'd be cool to name something that would reflect that. Zoikis means rabbit in Lithuanian if it was Year of the Rabbit on Chinese calendar. And now my year is 1998. That's Year of the Tiger. So if I adopted a pug in 2022 or in 2034, the next year of the tiger, I'll be in my 30s by then. If it's a boy pug, I'll name him Yusiri. If it's a girl, I'll name her Nika after the two tigers that I met during my internship at the Riverside Discovery Center, fall of 2022. Both they were sort of like while I've been bringing up my grandparents, they were sort of like the super cute old couple of that zoo, because they used to be like a mated pair, but they got too old to reproduce, and then they were kept in separate enclosures. They both passed away, unfortunately, while I was interning there, right before Christmas. So, in memory of them, if I adopt a pug during Year of the Tiger, for instance, I would name the boy either Yusiri or Nika in their memory. And yeah, next year is going to be Year of the Snake. Ooh, that's a tough one. If I adopt a pug during Year of the Snake, I'll probably name him Cobra. My guy Daily Reacts TV told me that he wants to make a reaction video to me talking about Jake Long. He's gonna be like, Vitas, I don't like snakes. And I love you, man. I'm this. It's funny because this past March, right? March 1st, the day after I record my last Skizzo rambling, he messaged me saying that his channel got terminated. I already made a whole rant video discussing that, so all the support I got in that video, seriously, we really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Again, I've been saying it for years, and I'll say it again here, a war is coming on YouTube for their bullshit policies like this. But anyways, back to Jake Long, American Dragon. I got that. Oh my gosh, it's American Dragon Jake Long. It's just the show's series finale. I feel like it is a satisfying finale. I still get the sense that the show is just rushed, because there's so much more that they could have done with the show. Again, I'm not an expert on what's going on behind the scenes when making this cartoon, but I hear that the show was just canceled very abruptly. So I like how they were able to tie things together with Jake's dad finding out that he married to a family of dragons, and Rose remembering who she is, and saving Jake and the other dragons from the super evil dark dragon. They get stuck in the temple and they kiss at the end. So, and yeah, just the whole themes about Spud and Trickster there helping save the day, and the whole themes that the show carries about family and friendship and duty and honor. I feel it came full circle, but just the whole world, again, because I'm an aspiring fantasy writer. I studied I have a degree in English. That's what I studied at CSU. It was an English major, and my minor was zoology. I've always been I've always wanted to write fantasy myself. So I just get the whole urban fantasy setting of New York City having all these different magic creatures, and now each country around the world has its own dragon. There's Jake Long, who's the American dragon, obviously. Then his grandfather used to be the Chinese dragon, and Haley's mentor son is the the Korean dragon. It's just and there's just so much that they could have been doing more of, but for whatever reason the show was canceled abruptly. I feel it really it deserved more than 2 seasons, and for that I would love to see, because because I haven't watched Samurai Jack, not in its entirety at least. If Samurai Jack, for example, could get an R-rated series finale, right? Because it's something that the fans have been wanting for years. Because I haven't watched Samurai Jack, but I heard that show it was canceled very abruptly and didn't really have a proper conclusion. which is why they made like the whole like R-rated like which that won an Emmy from what I've been told. I feel like Jake Long deserves the same treatment. Like I would just love to see, because the two episodes before the show's finale, like it's middle school graduation, but high school is a whole other journey, just like how college is and how life after college is. I would really like to see like a revival for like American Dragon. Like how cool would it be seeing Jake either during his high school years or his college years, and like having to be a dragon during those endeavors in life, because the show's main theme is like having this double life of being just like a regular like middle schooler, just going to school and like doing homework and studying and hanging out with friends and stuff like that, while also being like having a dragon superpower we can transform into a giant magic reptile and have to fight monsters and protect other magic creatures. Yeah, like I just imagine that would work so well for a setting like in high school or in college. And also like the side characters are just so like endearing, and I'm not gonna lie, I was low-key shipping Spud and Trixie for most of season 1 and like the first half of season 2. Then the homecoming episode, Spud thinks he's gonna make out with Stacy, and Trixie thinks she's gonna make out with what's his face, Alistair or whatever his name is. Yell at me in the comments. But yeah, they end up kissing each other by accident. The end of the episode, they're just like, nope, we're just gonna be friends from this point on, because they try making the whole date thing work with the homecoming dance, and Spud like messes up the whole slow dance scene. But like I feel like they were kind of hinting at a potential romance between the two, like in season 1 and season 2, with the whole like tie the knot thing in that one episode, and I realized, oh, we're literally going to tie the knot on like Spud's shoe. And I was like, oh man, this would be a cute romance, because because obviously the protagonist always gets the girl in shows, like how Jake ends up like happy with Rose at the end, and like, but side characters deserve, side characters should get a romance too. We don't really, I think the only instance of like a movie or a TV show that I've watched, right, where it's not the protagonist but the side character that gets the girl is Return of the King, with Sam marrying that one Hobbit chick when they go all the way back to the Shire, because Frodo never gets a love interest, but Sam does, and he's happily married with kids at the end of Return of the King. What if Rose doesn't, like Jake never gets like a love interest in like Jake Long, but like his best friend does? That would have been interesting, I guess. But yeah, I feel like the Disney Channel, I'm not entirely sure the full story behind like why they ended the show the way they did, but it definitely deserved like better treatment. I feel like this show is like a cult classic, and again, fingers crossed, it might just be a false hope. There's always fan fiction, but I would love to see this show get like a second chance, like in the next few years. I would like to see that for real. And yeah, like I said at the start of this video, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about American Dragon. Again, if you have Disney Plus and you haven't watched this show, like if you grew up in the 2000s like I did, like what are you doing? Give this show a shot. Like watch it. If you like, especially if you like fantasy, or if you're of Chinese descent, or at least just like appreciate like Chinese culture and like I really like, you guys really need to give this show a shot, like if you haven't already. Like oh geez, I'm like stumbling over myself again. It happens a lot when I make these videos. But yeah, I feel like the whole, because I grew up in a very because I grew up an hour outside New York City, so that's one other why I could relate to the show, and like how all these different like people immigrate to America looking for like a better chance in life, and I feel like all the challenges that come with it, regardless of like what part of the world you move from, like whether it's like Europe or Asia or Africa or like Mexico or Central South America or wherever else, is like there's so many challenges that come with that. And I'm really blessed that I grew up around like but I grew up Catholic, but I also was familiarized with like Judaism growing up because I had a lot of Jewish friends like in my neighborhood and like stuff like that. I grew up in a very I was exposed to a lot of different cultures growing up, including like Chinese culture because I joined the international club my junior year of high school. Right, and there were a lot of like Chinese kids in that international club. I even had like I had a Chinese girl as like my partner. During like history class when I sophomore, we were taking American history, and myself, and another girl that would also go to that international club. Like we made a whole board game together about that was like part of our final project. Yeah, she talked me into like joining the international club, and it's like we did a whole thing at the Arboretum that year, helping out with Chinese New Year. I got to wear like the whole like dragon suit and like command the dragon's jaws and go around on parade. And they taught me how to dance properly with it. I was like, whew, who needs a gym membership when you can just do that every Chinese New Year? That was awesome. But yeah, that's pretty much like my thoughts on American Dragon Jake Long. So yeah, I think I'm gonna keep the rest of the video like fairly spoiler free if anybody cares. Like these videos, like I said at the start of the video, they're not like scripted in any way. So I just like to I make like a little bullet list of things I want to discuss, like things I want to get off my chest, and there's other things I want to get off my chest. I rewatched my last Skizzo rant before I started recording this one to double check that I don't sound like a broken record, and say something I've said like already in my last video because I don't want anyone's eyes to roll into their brains. Perhaps there was something because I record my last video and I guess I was just too tired to remember to discuss it, but this March, right? This being March, and April's coming up soon, and it's springtime. This is my first time being home in New Jersey during the spring, since I graduated from high school. I was, because that was almost this coming June, June 22nd, I think. Yeah, it's gonna be my 7th anniversary of graduating, of myself, Danny, Shane, and Joe, and my friend Rachel as well, graduating from Melbourne High School, which is very crazy for me to think. This is my first time being home during the spring since I graduated from high school. Obviously, when I was going to college in Colorado, when I was going to CSU in Fort Collins, I went home for winter breaks, right? I flew back home to New Jersey winter breaks. And of course, I flew back home fall of 2019. I dropped out. I left CSU temporarily. I've touched base on that. Anyone who's been watching my videos since at least 2019 probably knows that. I won't, I was just going through, I've talked about it in other videos. I'll say it again here. I was just, sophomore year at CSU was just, a really difficult year for me. I'm glad those days are over. But yeah, I went back home for a few months, and I was home during the fall, right? And I did go home summer while I was at CSU back in 2019 for scout camp, as well as 2021, which this right after the spring semester of 2021 ended. My mom and I flew back to pack up our stuff and from my dad's house and bring the Subaru, all the way out to Colorado so she could, live with my uncle and stuff like that. So I was home during the summer, those 2 times, and but yeah, I never during the spring, I never went home at all during my time at CSU, and it's interesting seeing, New Jersey during this time of year nowadays than it was back then. Because I'm really, really fascinated by months and seasons. I mean, I've talked about this in other Skizzo ramblings, but on Spotify, when I'm playing my music, just going about my daily business, I really like to make playlists. I have 16 playlists, each a spring playlist, a summer playlist, a fall playlist, a winter playlist, and also 12 individual monthly playlists for each of the months of the year. And today was the first day I played my spring playlist since, this past spring. And yeah, just like, because this past March, you know, the day I saw Dune Part Two, I wore my Dookie shirt to the theater because that was my 7-year anniversary of seeing Green Day in concert for the first time. My friend Daniel and I saw Green Day in concert. That was my very first concert ever, actually, like before I graduated from MHS. And I saw him live a second time, August of 2021, before I graduated from CSU. I'm seeing him a third time this August with Rancid and Smashing Pumpkins. Oh, I can't wait. But yeah, it's like I make because my spring playlist is like mostly like alternative bands. Since I saw Green Day live for the first time like during March, right? I thought March and April were like the 2 months where it's like it's best for like angsty, like emo, like pop punk bands, and like, you know, punk bands and like 90s 2000s rock and like rock onwards, like Green Day, Fall Out Boy, Linkin Park, The Offspring, Nirvana, Blink-182, Imagine Dragons, Paramore, My Chemical Romance, Panic at the Disco, you know, all that, all the Social Distortion, you know, all those and all those classics. And like I know like May, like, and also like my season playlists, like not every like song on my like summer playlist, for example, is on my May playlist, but every song on my May playlist on my summer playlist. I know May is technically a spring month like March and April, but like every May day, like, you know, because like I said, I'm gonna make a Skizzo rambling on April Fool's Day and May 1st, like every May my brain just rolls like into summer mode. Because, I mean, my school district like, in Melbourne growing up, interestingly enough, was they ended school in June and start in September. And I think that's the case for most New Jersey schools, which is pretty rare because like most other states around the country, their schools usually like end in May and start in August. So the usually, because that, you know, when I was at CSU, like, you know, we would get out in May and start in, you know, the spring semester would end in May and the fall semester would start in August. So like May especially, like my brain started rolling into summer mode more as I went out to Colorado, because May is when it's like shorts and t-shirt weather and it's Memorial Day and like, you know, the pools and the beaches start and the water parks start opening up, and it's just like it's hot and sunny like all day long. And like it's also like the start of like the summer movie season, as well as when all the blockbusters start coming out every year. And of course, my internship at the Utica Zoo started this past May and ended this past August. And like I said at the start of this video, tomorrow is gonna be my anniversary of that video, that last video I made before I took my 2.5 month hiatus from making YouTube videos last year. It's just, I'm kind of like, cause I've been, the reason why I took that hiatus, and you know, I've talked about this in other videos, I'll say it again here, like I was supposed to intern at a zoo in Oregon last year, drove all the way out there for 3 days, and they somehow like didn't, they somehow had no idea they were like too full to take me in, like they didn't have any space for me to be there until I got all the way out there and took their drug test. Just, oh my goodness. I'm still kind of amazed, like just dumbfounded that whole situation would happen. But like I went to a hotel room and you know I was like, and you know, to tell my family and my friends what was going on, and how like, oh, I can't be an intern here. And I based my entire spring around that internship, and it fell through me for the dumbest reasons. And I was on the phone with my sister, and she was like, hey, this was, again, blessing in disguise, like, fuck them, fuck that place, and, you know, go, like, you know, you're in Oregon, go enjoy yourself. Which is what I did. I went down to the coast the next day, and I hit up Newport and Bend and cities like that. Yeah, Oregon's an awesome state, beautiful place. And she's like, hey, give it a year or two and you're gonna say, thank God that happened to me. And yeah, I honestly, as soon as like I moved back to the Northeast for the Utica Zoo internship, and you know, I had a rock and roll summer like interning at that zoo, and saw Avenged Sevenfold in concert this past June, and saw my dad and my sister for the first time in like almost 2 years. Like, yeah, I was thinking, yeah, thank God that happened. Because I came back to, you know, this past Sunday was St. Patrick's Day. I remember returning to Denver last March, like right before St. Patrick's Day. And after, like cutting loose in Oregon for a few days, making a great trip out of, I made a good vacation out of not so good circumstances. And I just got straight to work with like door dashing, and I got into a car accident when I was still living in Nebraska that past January, and I finally put in the shop and so they could fix my car's bumper, right? And while my car was in the shop, I updated my resume and applied to as many like zoo internships and like dog daycare jobs in the area as much as possible, because I work at a dog place now, Dogtopia, and it's the same chain I used to work for in Fort Collins when I was ending my CSU, when I was a senior at CSU. And I worked at a pet resort for 4 weeks in nearby my uncle's neighborhood in Denver. Well, actually, it was in Parker, Colorado, not Denver, technically. But anyways, I worked there for 4 weeks, so I was like, you know what, just God forbid I can't get a zoo internship this summer, if the Utica Zoo didn't accept me for their program, I could at least have that as like a fallback plan, because I knew I needed, okay, I want revenge on that zoo in Oregon. I'm going to find a much better zoo internship. And I did, but you know what? All things considered, I took my hiatus. I had my reasons for doing so, because I was just like, I just really felt like that YouTube just needed to take a back seat, and I needed to just figure myself out in a sense, because being in my mid-20s, it's I can't, my parents, my uncle in Denver, my family, they're not gonna always be there to support me as much as they have been forever. And I was just really nervous and afraid of my future at the time, because I really had no idea. I just felt so directionless, and I really just needed to take a step away from making videos and just work on myself. And yeah, that 2.5 month time frame, those months I was not making videos, again, I'm glad those days are over, but I look back fondly on those days. I was being productive. I was door dashing. I'm still door dashing this day, and I worked at a pet place briefly. Working at a pet place now. And yeah, I just like how I think that everyone should try retail or service, being a cashier, being a waiter or a waitress, at least at some point in their lives. I think anyone who wants to go into an animal related career of any kind, whether it's zoos or aquariums or national parks or education or stuff like that, I think anyone who wants to go into an animal related field should try dog daycares and pet resorts at least once, even if it's to find out that you don't like working at dog daycares. Because I'm just gonna warn you guys now, if you've never worked at a dog daycare before, there's a lot more to it than just playing with dogs all day. It's a lot of cleaning, and you'd be surprised how stressful it gets being in a room full of dogs. But yeah, I think everyone should try it at least once. It's not a career. I've been applying. I feel like after interning at the Utica Zoo this summer, I feel like I'm qualified for at least most entry-level positions at zoos. I've been applying to zoo jobs, and I've been, looking at opportunities. I feel like I said this on my New Year's Day Skizzo rambling back in January. Not really. I touched base because I did my whole New Year's Eve live stream with Eric and Daily Reacts, and I said this in that live stream that if I can't get a job at a zoo by this August, by the time the Green Day concert rolls around, I'll move back to Denver. I'm not too sure about that plan anymore. Maybe I'll stick with it, maybe I won't. It's just I'm applying to jobs, but all things considered, life in New Jersey again has been good, ever since August. Yeah, I've never really been the one to treat YouTube as making YouTube videos as Dear Diary, or or go into every single detail about my personal life, because, well, frankly, a lot what goes on in my life off camera at the end of the day is no one's business. Watch my YouTube videos unless I make it my business. There's just some things I just don't need to share. I don't share every single thing that goes on. Nobody does, and nobody has to. But it's I just remember, at the end of high school last year, this is why I don't like rewatching my old videos. like between 2013 till 2017. Because there's just, looking back in those videos now, like, I don't regret making them by any means, and if you guys enjoy watching, if you guys have been watching my videos for years, and if you still enjoy rewatching those videos, that's great. I'd love to hear it, but, like, I don't like rewatch my old videos, by myself at least, because there are a lot of just, like, times throughout high school I do not look back fondly on. I'm very happy that those years are over, and yeah, like, and seeing those videos kind of brings back those, like, some triggering memories that I have. Like, I'm not mad at anyone who wronged me back then, but let's just say I get mad at myself to this day that I keep dwelling on those things. And I just remember, like, 2017, that May, like, right before I graduated from high school, like, I made a whole playlist on my iPod called Goodbye Milburn, right? I was like, okay, I'm going to college this August, I'm never looking back. But in retrospect, like, since I've been back here since August, like, I don't think it was really Milburn or New Jersey itself I was, like, so, desperate to get away from. I feel like it was more or less the fact, like, I had lived in this small, very pretentious neighborhood, like, the first almost, like, 19 years of my entire life. And I finally had the opportunity to blast off to somewhere else, and I took it in a much bigger area with way more different types of people going there. But yeah, I don't think it was like Milburn, New Jersey itself I was so desperate to get away from. I feel like it was more or less just like all the issues that I had to deal with growing up, both with like my mental challenges and like, with school and like just stuff going on at home and, just a lot of hard times I faced. I feel like it was more just that bad taste I wanted to wash out my mouth more than anything else. Because yeah, I grew up in a place where like not going to college after graduating high school wasn't an option. Like, and Milburn's very cutthroat with the education system, and kids are. It's a very competitive school district, but here's the thing: it is a very, very privileged neighborhood, and if you grow up in this part of the country, it's easy to forget that. Like, because there are towns like right next to mine, towns that I've been door dashing around quite a bit, like ever since I moved back here in August, that they're not as, like, just putting it bluntly, they're not as well off as the one I grew up in. And it's easy to forget that. So like, I feel, because growing up, like my mom would always take my sister and I, again, like, this is why I wanted to talk about Jake Long, because I first watched this show like when I was visiting my grandparents out in Denver growing up. Like, because my family take my sister and I out to visit my grandparents, my uncle, like on an annual-ish basis in Colorado. Grew up and I've been going to school in Colorado, living out there for 5 years, and living at my uncle's house, or like on and off in between like me leaving Fort Collins and just in between like the zoo internships that I was having, which of course my last zoo internship brought me all the way back here to the Northeast. Like, if my childhood was like the reverse, if I was born in Colorado, like a small, like very cliquey, very like academically just like cutthroat environment, and if I had family in the New Jersey or New York area, if my Mochota Sanalis, my uncle, were all out, but Mochota Sanalis is a Lithuanian word for a grandma and granddad, by the way. And if my grandparents and my uncle were in New York City or like in New Jersey, and if there were a lot of cool opportunities, like, well, with colleges out there, I probably would have ended up saying, hey, goodbye Denver, or like goodbye Colorado Springs, or whatever, like small. I know those are not small neighborhoods, but like I've heard, there's small towns in Colorado too. And if I just left it for New York and New Jersey, yeah, I probably would have felt the same way. But there's this one thing that I really wish that I had heard, like, sooner, because I heard this when my mom and I were road tripping, from, packing up her stuff and taking the Subaru out from New Jersey to Colorado. During that road trip, I saw this thing on Facebook where it was like, hey, these are a bunch of difficult truths that we all need to accept. And one of those being is that, like, happiness is either where you are right now or it's nowhere at all. I really wish I had heard that, like, when I started making YouTube videos, like, way back in 2013, or any time, like, when I was, like, a teenager, because I was so convinced that, like, that, I grew up in just a shithole, and that, like, there were so many better places for me out there, but really, like, your happy place is either where you are currently, or it doesn't even exist. Because you gotta, like, make your own happiness, and, like, happiness is a choice, and I don't want to become that person where, like, their comfort zone is just having a lot of problems, just being angry and miserable all the time. And yeah, but I'm doing well. Work's been stressful. I'm glad I'm back at the gym. It's been difficult finding, like, a sense of direction with this year, but, like, at this point, like I said, maybe I'll move back to Denver after the Green Day concert. Maybe I'll move somewhere else completely, like neither in New Jersey or Colorado, maybe somewhere else. I've been looking at, the AZO website, Association of Zoos and Aquariums. Been looking at, like, new job postings. Maybe I've applied to a place in Ohio and 2 places in Pennsylvania. For all I know, I'll get it out, like, further west than New Jersey, but not as far west as Colorado. Who knows? I'm just gonna do my thing and enjoy the ride, and I encourage you guys to do the same. Alright, well, I think that's about it for this Skizzo rambling. Like I said, the next one is probably gonna be on April Fool's Day, and the one after that is gonna be on May Day, and then just going forward, I'm gonna keep these kind of videos, like, I'm gonna record them, like, on the first day of every month. So yeah, I'll see if hopefully I can get this up before midnight. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe. Stay beastly.